name is Spike. This is Matty Labatique. And we are here in your great country of Argentina to shoot a commercial, a BMW commercial. So that's why we're here.
The reason why I asked Matty and I to come here is we were both graduates of film school. Matty went to AFI, American Film Institute, and I went to New York University Graduate Film School. I'm still a professor there. So I've been teaching film the last 9 years while I went to school. And 2 years ago, they made me the artistic director of a film school. I like to speak to other film students at other film schools.
Hello. I also enjoy talking to other film schools and talking to film students in general because, I was able to make films at a very young age, and I know that's the goal of many students, and I like to share in general how I did it with people and how I was able to make that happen so that, that that it's possible, and you don't have to wait, 20 years in your career to make your first film. You can go out and do it and make it happen. Guns N' Roses.
Sir, on my set,
$20 fine.
when the phone rings, $20 goes in my pocket. So, also my class. So let's please turn all phones off. Don't even put them on vibrate. Off.
In NYU, it's a 3-year program, but I went to graduate program, so I had 4 years of undergraduate school. I went to Morehouse College, Atlanta, Georgia, and in 3 years at NYU. And at NYU, everybody gets to make a film. Some film schools, you have to write a script, and then the teachers decide which films get made and which films don't get made. NYU, if you're a director, everybody gets to make a film. And I find it very important that there's no one way to do everything. So you don't have to go to film school to be a filmmaker. I mean, it's not a prerequisite. You have to find out what is your best route. And also, in film school, when you come out of school and you're trying to get a job, the fact that you have a degree means nothing. So if you're a cinematographer, when you finish film school, you should have a reel. If you're an editor, when you come out of film school, you should have a reel. If you're a screenwriter, when you come out of film school, you should have several scripts. When you're a director, when you come out of film school, you should have films. Because those are the things that are going to get you noticed, going to get you a job, going to get you an agent. But if you just have a degree and no work to show for that degree, then...
Just take the mic.
I speak very loud. But I will take them. Do we have more than one mic here?
Let me check.
Please.
We have a lot of people outside, that's right.
Okay. And, this is in the sound outside, huh? Okay. When you go to film school, when you come out, it's very important that you have work. If you're a cinematographer, you should have a reel. If you're an editor, you should have a reel. If you're a director, you should have films you've directed. Because once you finish school, all you have is a degree, then you're going to be behind. And so often, I went to film school almost 20 years ago, and so we didn't have the equipment, the technology we did not have then. So in my class, before, when I went to school, we had to fight for the Steenbeck. Now in my class, my students are editing on their computer, their laptops. So if you can, utilize the technology.
As a cinematographer, I think that, the first thing you should do when you get out of film school is try to replace that reel. from film school, because ultimately what you're doing here is you're learning, you're performing exercises, but you can't think that reel is going to last you more than a year. That reel will get you the next thing that you shoot, and you got to replace that. You got to keep replacing the things on your reel so that you can move forward. Because it's what I've learned in the last 10 years is that it's just changing. It's evolving. Looks are evolving. Technology is evolving, and you're going to have to. I mean, it's a constant study. It's a constant school. Once you get out, school just gets bigger, and you need to keep up with technology, and you just need to keep improving your reel and improving your craft. You can't sit. As a cinematographer, sometimes I meet directors that don't do films for a year. I work with Darren Aronofsky. He doesn't make a film for 2 or 3 years. I couldn't do that. As a cinematographer, you can't do that. You're always having to work on your craft, and you always have to improve, and you have to keep up with what's going on all the time. So, the other thing, we're doing a commercial, and that's how sort of Spike and I both, we sort of, spend our time in between films doing that, because there's no experience like being on set, and making it happen, and putting things on film, and making images, and telling stories. You can't sit and think about it. You just got to make it happen. Everybody's got to be proactive.
And what Maddie and I did was really good that Maddie and I do. We've been able to work on commercials before we shoot a film. Our first film we worked together was a film called She Hate Me, and now we're getting ready to do a film in this June starring Denzel Washington, Clive Owen, and Jodie Foster called Inside Man. So it's always good that before you could start a film, do some side projects between the cinematographer and the director. So we're looking forward to that. So in our spare time, while we're here shooting this commercial in Argentina, we're talking about this feature film we're going to do in June in New York. I think with technology today, money is no longer an excuse. Money is no longer an excuse. It was when I was in film school, because you could never get the equipment. And when I went to film school, myself and a lot of my classmates, we saw film school as a rental house. We were paying tuition to get access to the equipment, to facilities. NYU had an agreement with SAG, the Screen Actors Guild, so we used actors free, and your classmates were your crew. So all you had to do was feed your crew, and the film school gave you film, so you weren't even worrying about the degree, you just wanted access. But now with that camera right there, you could shoot a feature film with that camera right there. People have. So anybody says money is the reason why I can't get a film done, that's an excuse. By hook or crook, you could edit a film on a laptop. You could get a film made. You have to have the gang mentality. A group, you only need like 3 or 4 other people. You get together, everybody has the same goals, same aspirations, and everybody works, dedicates their life to getting this film done. And then when it becomes a hit, everybody gets in. But you got to have that, so just don't think it's going to be me alone. You should have, first year, you have to be like a scout in sports. All right, who's a good DP? Who's a good producer? Who's a good editor? And get together, come together as a team, and work. And I like the next statement is not done with any disrespect to the teachers here or any teachers or myself, because I tell my students the same thing. But when you come to film school, you cannot expect your teachers to teach you how to be a filmmaker. You can't do it. They could, you get the basics, how to read a meter, how to load a camera. But anybody coming to film school expecting your instructor or your professor to teach you how to be a filmmaker. It can't happen. You learn to become a filmmaker by making films, by going out there and making mistakes. Film school, this is a time to make mistakes. You don't want to make mistakes when your film's in 1,000 theaters and it's being reviewed. You know, and people say, this director's terrible. So often in film school, students try to be too safe instead of being adventurous because they don't want to make a mistake. But this is a time to experiment. And so, when you're here in film school, you can learn as much working on other people's films as when you're directing your own. So again, I can only talk about my experience at NYU, but we spent very little time in the classroom. We were out shooting your own films, you're working on your classmates' films. And so that's all we did. 24/7. We weren't making films, we were in the movie theaters. We weren't watching Hollywood films either, you know. So we were consumed by cinema every day. Cinema, 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 cinema. And that's the dedication that you need to break into a very hard industry. When I was in film school and we wanted to see how a certain sequence was done, you would sit in the movie theater and see the same film 3 or 4 times. No longer is that needed. DVD. The best, young filmmaker's best friend. There's so much information you can get in these directors' commentaries now, where directors explain. Now you have to get the right director and the right film. But there is you don't have to go to film school anymore. If you listen to these directors' you get the right film and the right director, it's a film school in itself, where they explain in depth how, not just how they did it, but for more. Listen, I listen to the director commentaries too, so I want to learn. It's not just how they did it, but for me, what was the thinking behind it? That's more important. Why did you decide to use that lens? What was the thinking behind this? So instead of me asking these guys, I could just buy the director's, listen to the director's commentary. I'm going to just tell you the filmmakers I like. And there's nothing to do with DVD commentary. Billy Wilder, he did this film. I know everybody knows about Sunset Boulevard, but he did this film called Ace in the Hole. It's also called Big Carnival, starring Kirk Douglas. If you could find that film, that's a great film. Elia Kazan, he did this film that followed on the waterfront called A Face in the Crowd. When I was in film school, one of the films that's indirectly made me want to do it even more was Jim Jarmusch's Strange in Paradise, because Jim was at NYU Film School 2 years ahead of me. So when you're in film school and here we are, I'm in film school, we're learning about Hitchcock, he's dead, Kurosawa, Scorsese, but we didn't know him. But when somebody that you went to film school makes it, then it becomes possible. So when Jim Jarmusch's film, Strange in Paradise, became a hit, everybody in film school was elated because we know this guy. I worked in the equipment room, so I checked out equipment to Jim. And so when you open up the New York Times and you see a full-page ad for Strange in Paradise, like, yeah, We can do it. It's possible.
A little bit about your experience in P.
States is called pie.
Yeah.
Pie.
Sorry, my mistake.
No, that was that's one of those experiences where we had a very small crew. Maybe we had 10 people, and we traveled around in a van where we threw all our equipment in. We didn't have, the biggest light I had was 2,000 watts, and it had a big dent in it, and we got it for free. And everything we got was for free, and everybody worked for free, and we shot for. That was one of the, that was a long shoot. That was almost 30 days of free, but it was really hard. Like in the middle of it, I would literally drive. I'd be in front of a van, just driving, looking at everybody, like having coffee on the sidewalks and having ice cream cones and walking their dogs with. And when am I going to be free to do that? But at the same time, in retrospect, it was probably the most. It was probably the best filmmaking experience you could ever have because you were completely free. I mean, we did a shot in Pi where we attached the camera to the actor's back, and we ran down Canal Street, which is a big street, right in the middle, no permits, nothing. And we almost got hit by a cab. We ended up on the corner of Broadway and Canal, and there was a cop. And New York cops are just so, New York cops. And he's like, do me a favor. Like, yes, sir. Don't do that again. I was like, all right. So next thing you know, we go to Chinatown and do some more shots, and it was guerrilla. It was, and it was really difficult to make. And but I'll tell you a story about it though. It's when we I didn't have dailies. I didn't see the film. We shot black and white reversal, which is extremely difficult for all the cinematographers that know anything about film. There's no latitude. So if you miss the exposure, well, you just fucked everything up. So, and I did. But man, after a week of dailies, we're like, whoa, the film's going to look like this? Okay.
What was the fact or whatever made you become a filmmaker?
Well, my mother took me to movies when I was very little. And so I see now that's where the seed was planted. But in fact, my mother dragged me to see I forgot. I'm getting old. Mean Streets. My mother dragged. I said, I don't want to. Who is this? Martin Scorsese. Who is this guy? I don't want to go see this film. Robert De Niro. Who's that? But my mother was very smart, so I thanked her afterwards for taking me to see the film. But so really, it was at that time. No, I mean I had no idea what I was going to be. But my mother planted the seed with me early going. She would take me to Broadway shows when I was very early, very young. So that's, and also I think that for me, cinema involves almost all the arts: painting, photography, dance, music. I love music, and music has always played a very important part in my films. So, and also I think that this is what I tell my students all the time. I say my prayers every night because I have a job doing what I love. Besides my family, there's nothing I love more than cinema. And for me, cinema is not just feature films. Cinema has brought me to Argentina for a commercial. I do music. Cinema brought me to Brazil to do a Michael Jackson video, so I have my own advertising agency. I do documentaries, so I don't limit myself just to feature films. And so, as I said before, I'm lucky because the majority of the people on this planet hate the job they have. I'm going to say that again. The majority of the people on this planet go to their grave having worked at a job they hated. And so, as I'm a little older than you, so please understand this. Right now, in the time in your life, it doesn't matter. You know, another thing about film school, everybody, except for a couple of cinematographers, when everybody comes to film school, everybody wants to direct. Everybody can be a director. So there are many other different, you could still have, there are many other creative jobs in filmmaking, but not everybody's going to direct. So just in case you find out that directing is not your thing, that doesn't mean that you got to quit and not still be involved in film. So try to find out now. You know, you might be a horrible director, but you might be a great editor. You know, or writers. Just find out what are your strengths, because everyone is not going to direct.
La pregunta es si se sintió presionado al filmar La Hora 25, tomando en cuenta que era la primera película después del 11 de septiembre.
No. But we understood the significance of it. There was no pressure, though. The 25th Hour was a book originally written by David Benioff, and he wrote the screenplay. And both were written before September 11th. So one of the reasons why Edward Norton and I wanted to do this film was because that we could place this film in a post 9/11 New York City. So we added all that stuff to the script.
Well, I think, videos, in my experience, you know, I've done over 100 music videos, and you know, I think the ones that embrace the fact that they're only 4 minutes, and the ones that don't try to necessarily tell stories in a feature film type way are the most successful, not successful, but the most artistic. They're the ones that mean something to me, because, you know, directors like Michel Gondry and, Spike Jonze, Hype Williams, they're making it more than just a traditional filmmaking. They're actually taking that 4.5 minute form and they're making a piece of art. Where in feature films, it's cyclical. Style-wise, it's cyclical, because, you know, I've been on many films where you see music videos and you use those as reference, and you try to apply something somebody did in the music video to your film in some way, shape, or form. But at the same time, I've been on music videos. It's like, they watch countless films to try to reference the video that they're trying to do. So I think the languages between the two are coming together. But I think that people should embrace music videos as a separate art form. I mean, we use the same tools to make them, but the language is inherently different because of the space that you have to tell whatever you're trying to tell.
It's been my experience that film students are much more proficient with the technology than working with actors. So it really wasn't until my third film that I felt comfortable working with actors. Didn't happen in She's Gonna Have It. Didn't happen in School Daze. So it wasn't until Do the Right Thing, my third film, that I felt that I knew how to relate to actors. When you're in film school, especially for me, you hide behind the camera and the lenses, and you're almost even afraid to talk to actors. You know, because you're trying to find. For me, it was just intimidating. So, I think that the more you should take acting lessons if you're a director. You should act. I mean, just try to feel, what it is. It's very hard to get up in front of a camera and act, and as a director, you need to understand that. But overall, I find that the best directors work. I mean, they're top of the game with the technology, top of the game with the actors, just like an athlete. The great athletes, as they say, have a complete game. That means they can do everything. Because that's where you want to be. You don't want to be a director like is great setting up shots, but the acting stinks. And you don't want to be a director. I'm not going to name any names. Where, you really know how to work with the actors, but you're not helping the actors by how you're filming them. You're just turning the camera on and just recording a performance. As a director, you want to enhance. You want to use your tools. You want to use the tools you have as a filmmaker. Here's the thing. As a director, you want to use everything you have at your disposal to help tell the story. Whether it be the editing, the production design, the music, the cinematography. Those are all parts of film grammar to help you tell a story. And the best directors are well versed in all that stuff. If you're a film director, if you want to be a great film director, that's the thing why there's so few great film directors, because you have to know so much about everything. Psychology, music, sex, clothes, fashion. You have to know all. You don't have to be an expert in that stuff, but you got to have some understanding of many different things, because all those things really is part of filmmaking. Well, in reality, right now there's a blur between independent cinema and Hollywood cinema. So a lot of times it's a hybrid. You don't know what a film is. So for me, I've always just tried to be adaptable. When it's time for me to use resources of the Hollywood studio system, I will. And when it's time for me to just try to do a film, completely independent, I will. So the most important thing is get the film made.
No. I think that most of the films that are being made now exist in that gray area of independent versus studio. The true studio movies are Spider-Man, gigantic, gargantuan elephants. And then there's a movie like Elephant, and that's just independent film. But even in a movie like Elephant is on the very cusp of being a studio movie, because maybe they had distribution money from Lionsgate or something. And who's to say that Lionsgate is independent? They're studio, ultimately. So, I think that because of that gray area, it's not so difficult to bridge the gap if you have to do independent film versus a studio film, because they're coming together a little bit now. True independent cinema then is really just what Pi was, where it's like nobody had any money and we didn't have any money, and you just had to grab a camera and make it happen for yourself. That is independent cinema. After that, Killer Films and the Ted Hopes and Christine Vachons of the world, they're in New York, and they make many quote unquote independent films. Well, they're not independent. They get studio money, so I think it's a mix.
La pregunta es que, según lo que él dice en este momento, muchas de las películas que vienen de Estados Unidos estarían dentro de lo que uno denominaría cine comercial y mucho menos un cine artístico. La pregunta hacia Spike Lee es cómo hace él para lograr que sus películas, a pesar o teniendo que afrontar que tengan un costado comercial, aún así prevalezca lo artístico.
Well, that has always been the big enigma in films, art versus commerce. And so you just try to find, it's a balance in that. You're on a high wire. It's a trapeze act, and you just try not to fall off. And sometimes you're successful. And a lot of it depends, If you have a big star, a lot of times that gives you a better chance of. At least it gets you on more screens and gets you some TV commercials and ads. So so again, it's going to be good working with Denzel again. This will be our 4th time working together. The first one was Mo Better Blues and Malcolm X, and He Got Game. So I've been doing this. The last 3 or 4 films have been kind of small independent films. So with this new film, we're gonna, have a lot more visibility. So it'll be good.
How has your perspective, your outlook changed from both of you, from your very first films towards, until the films that you're making now? In general terms, I guess that's the question. How is your outlook and your...
For me, it must have been after Ron, when I read a quote by Akira Kurosawa, who at that time was probably been like 85 years old. One of my favorite filmmakers, one of the true masters of cinema. When I read a quote from him at 85 years old that he said that there's still a universe of cinema that I do not know. When a man like that says at 85, then that's a very humbling experience. It made me realize that I should never ever get comfortable to a point to think that I know it all. And as long as you can breathe, you can learn. And that's not just that does just not apply to filmmaking. That just applies to life in general.
I think it's definitely different. The first film, you have a lot of energy and you have nothing to lose. When you make a film, you're not trying to impress a studio, you're not trying to impress a financier, you're just trying to make a film because it's your first movie. So there's a lot of excitement there, and it's a different type of excitement. Then when you get to your 10th movie, it's definitely different. But you have to, you have to always check yourself and remember why, what made you excited on that first film. So it's really, you have to watch yourself, because you do change. You do change, and you learn more, and you think you're entitled to a few things, which you're not. And in general, you just have to make sure, we say keep it real. You just got to keep it real from, your first film to your last. And that's a hard thing to do. But it's really about that enthusiasm that got you to be a filmmaker in the first place.
Matt and I like to thank you for listening to what we have to say, and hopefully there was something we said that you could utilize to your development as a filmmaker. Also like to add that you guys are the future Argentine cinema. So you got to step up to the bat and represent. I'm going to have you read this, but I wrote this out so you can just read in Spanish. It's a Spike Lee 40 Acres and Mule Inside Man internship program. You can fax a cover letter. A cover letter means why you want to do this and what department you'll be interested in. And you fax that to a number which is 718-624-2008. Very important. This is a non-paying internship, and you must have a place to stay in New York City. And we'll start the program beginning mid-June, and we go all the way to the end of August. I don't know how this yeah, but I'm talking about what do they call that thing?
What?
How to get into the country now?
Oh, visa?
Yeah, they're kind of cracking down now.
Department of Homeland Security.
Yeah, Homeland Security, but you can slip through the Mexican border if you want to, Just cross the Rio Grande.
Just don't look any Republicans in the face.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you hesitate to die,